Welcome everybody. It's episode 370 of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, joined today by the Brian Cody of Irish MMA Media, Graeme MacDonald, as we talk about do you know what? It was an interesting night in the world of mixed martial arts last night. We had the biggest card of the year. And do you know what? Don't fast forward today. There's no Manscaped ad, so we're going to get straight into it here and talk about UFC 276. Because Graeme, I was coming into this card, right? And if anyone listened to our show last week or listened to the preview show, I was bang up for this card. I could not wait for it. I spent extra hours that I didn't have come back watching fights, even though, I'd watched the Max Holloway fight against Volkanovski plenty of times, and I'd watched all the Cannonier and Adesanya fights, but I went back and I watched them anyway so we could break it down and so we could talk about it. I went back watching Ian Gary fights and Gabe Green fights and got mad up for that fight, and that was good. We'll get to that in a second, but it just felt like, and I went back and I looked at the card there this morning just before we started here with a big sleepy head me, and I was like, that kind of disappointed, didn't it? It was one of those shows that, and not to be a negative Nancy or anything, but I couldn't have been more positive about the show coming into it and then coming out of it. I wonder, is it just the way it ended? Because it was just such a boring main event. And as you saw the video that I put up, the TO shot over there, people streaming out like during the fourth or just after the fourth round because of how bad it was. It was, we try to call it straight here. We try to get the ebb and flow of what's actually gone on. And I felt like that's exactly what it was. Everyone was mad up for his International Fight Week. It felt like the first real International Fight Week in years. The build-up had been great. The card was great. The fights were all we wanted to see, and some of them in the undercard were very, very good, and we will get to them. But the way it ended, it just kind of dragged it all down. What were your feelings watching it, Graeme?
Yeah, if you're hyping it up massively in your head, obviously it's going to disappoint. But if you're just coming in casually and you're kind of just throwing it on for the main card, obviously the main event wasn't great, but for the rest of the main card, it was pretty entertaining. But as you said, when it's such a big card and it has big names and matchups you're looking forward to, maybe it did underwhelm a little bit. But I think overall it was still a pretty good card.
Yeah, overall it was a good card. Yeah, I would agree with that. But I don't know, it just ended so terribly that it was I dragged it all down, because I remember talking in the build up coming up. I expected.
Do you really think it was that terrible? The main event?
It was awful. Yeah, did you?
It went kind of similar enough to how I thought it would go. To be honest.
But I hoped for better. Did you watch it last night or did you watch it this morning waking up?
I watched it this morning. I watched up to the Robbie Lawler fight last night.
That's probably it. So maybe I was 6 a.m. watching this fucking faint fest. Maybe that's a bit of it. It probably wasn't as bad as I make it.
Part of it.
Although people walking out and lots of the other people I saw online reacting to it and things were of the same mind as me. I think a lot of now, maybe some people disagree. And look, if you were to go back and pick it apart and do a technical breakdown of it, I'm sure it would be you could pick unbelievably good things that Adesanya did out of it. But a big problem for Adesanya is, right, he came in and he is the guy that they're all talking about being the next star, being the next McGregor and all of this. And he came in this week and he said, I want to show, what was it? I want to show off. I want to be the show. I want to be the top of the show. Performances like this are not going to get you to McGregor levels, are not going to make you a person that people look at and they think he's a show-off. He is, a destructive fighter. And there's been too many of these as well. The Yoel Romero fight was absolutely god-awful. Even the Vettori and Whitaker fights weren't blowers at all. I saw Mookie Alexander talking about it last night, saying of his, 4 title defenses, 3 of them have been awful. And it's the ones that went to a decision, and that's hard to debate with, and that is not a star-making thing, especially, and I think this cannot be said enough, with how bad middleweight is. Like, Jared Cannonier was god-awful last night. He just offered absolutely nothing. And you can probably look at it and say, well, Jared Cannonier actually probably did well for who Jared Cannonier is. And I would probably agree with that. But if we're talking about a world title fight at the top of a card in International Fight Week, if this is the best you can find to go in there against Israel Adesanya, what does that say about the division? But also, what does it say about Adesanya that he can't get him out of there or he can't style on him? Like, this was a fight of fine margins, to quote my good friend Richard Kiley. Like, this was a fight that literally could have turned on a punch or two. And I think he won the third round in 2 cards. That fourth round was close. If he had landed 2 more shots there, Cannonier, he could have won that, and it could have been 2-2 going into the 5th. Now, that might seem insane, but that's actually the situation. If you think back on it, it feels like a fight that Adesanya absolutely dominated in terms of the goings of the fight. There wasn't one big significant strike. There wasn't one moment in the fight that made you excited or anything. And this week as well, with the Hall of Fame and all this shit, we've been thinking about the sport more than the actual X's and O's of the sport itself. And we have to do that because that's what MMA is about. And it just feels like Adesanya is one of those guys who talks and talks and talks about being entertaining and exciting and all of that. But he's actually boring as fuck, right? He is really, really, really boring. And he's this faint fest, and it's great, and I'm sure if you like foot boxing and all of this shit, you'll be delighted watching this for 5 rounds. But God almighty, and I'm a little bit mad here now, so I could change my mind in a while, but I was staying up till 6 o'clock in the morning to watch this lad fainting at this average middleweight who should not even be in the cage with him because he's so inferior. And he just doesn't style on him. He doesn't take it to the next level. Like.
I think the problem may be that these opponents are so inferior. The middleweight division is kind of so limited that it's just easy for Adesanya to go in there and just kind of, spar around with the guys and pick up easy decisions. And he doesn't have to make things, he doesn't have to make things happen from behind. He hasn't been, in the middleweight division anyway, in kind of big adversity where he needs to come out and make something happen around. He's kind of always in control, and he's not really taking chances because he doesn't need to. Obviously we saw him step up in weight and it didn't go well. He obviously lost that, but at middleweight we've seen it become all a bit too easy for him. I think that's the problem. That
is part of the problem. Although, it's weird that you can understand when he fights Yoel Romero, right? Because he's so dangerous and all, to kind of stand there and wait and wait and wait. There's no problem with that fight, I don't think. But when he does the same against Marvin Vettori or Cannonier, it's like, well, Whittaker, okay, fair enough, whatever. But God almighty, just... look, it might be unfair of me to say this, but we're looking at a very unfair fan base. We're looking at. I saw loads of fans last night because that video that I put up went a bit viral or whatever, and there was people replying to it. And I saw loads of people saying, I will never buy an Israel Adesanya pay-per-view again. No, they probably will the next time it comes around, what I mean?
They definitely will. It's like MMA retirements.
Yeah, but you also don't want that feeling about one of your potential big stars. You really, really don't, especially in America. Like, people were talking, I was comparing him versus Holloway, and I actually think Holloway at the top of the card would have done better, and we've talked about it last week. I won't get into it again. But a lot of Adesanya's following obviously is in Australia and New Zealand as well, where it's, I think it's pay-per-view there if I'm not mistaken, but it's not the same sort of pay-per-view as it is in America, where it's $90 or anything like that. And we know how cutthroat the American fan base can be in terms of, I wonder, can you hear that helicopter behind me? The JP McManus Invitational thing is on just down the road over the next couple of days, and there's helicopters just going back and forth all the time for the last fucking week, and just non-stop. But anyway, I just really think sometimes you have a star-making performance. McGregor knocking out Aldo, or John Jones against Shogun, and you have maybe those lads, and Jones especially, obviously, because McGregor didn't go on the long run as champion, but having maybe more boring or more lackluster fights, but then they have the exciting one, the Jones versus Gustafsson fight, or big submissions like against Lyoto Machida or whatever it might be, or knocking out Daniel Cormier with the high kick and things. it just feels like Adesanya's had none of that. He destroyed Paulo Costa because Paulo Costa was so bad that he couldn't not destroy him. But everything else has just been a decision over the last while.
It's a lack of jeopardy, It's a lack of jeopardy in the fights, I think, as well. Yeah.
That's a big problem, though, isn't it? It feels like MMA is an inherently risky sport. But when you're fighting such inferior fighters and inputting no risk into it itself, it just takes away that jeopardy. Like when you're watching fights, Graeme, I know, like me too, I watch it for judging and I watch it for, the general goings of the fight, if you want to put it that way, and the technique and the tactics and all. But also at the end of the day, if there's no entertainment there, like literally, like this fight there was no entertainment in it. You could talk about tactics, you could talk about what he did to stifle Cannonier and all of this, but there was just no entertainment there. And what is MMA without entertainment? Cowboy retired last night, and everyone was talking about, he's going into the Hall of Fame. And I don't really understand Hall of Fames, we might get into that later, we might not. But he's getting in there, right? If he does get in there, because he's entertaining, because he used to show up, and even if he'd get finished or he'd get a head kick or he'd get a submission or whatever it might be, he put on a show and he was entertaining, right? And okay, he didn't get to the top of the mountain like Adesanya has got to or anything like that, but the guys who are beloved like that, whether it's him or even Romero at times or McGregor or Aldo or whatever, they put on a show. Like even Aldo going to a decision all those times, and people used to give out to him about going to a decision, but it was entertaining. Dominic Cruz going to a decision was entertaining. It just feels like Adesanya's is just his lack of entertainment. Do you think that's a big thing, or am I overstating it here?
I think maybe a little bit you're overstating it, but I do agree, with a lot of it. I think, for Adesanya, he kind of needs a big rival, and, it looked for a while like it could have been Whittaker, but it wasn't. And you look through the division and you're thinking, who's it going to be? And then nobody really stands out. He needs that rival, he needs that kind of adversity in his fights and to come back and, for the fans, like the fans love that stuff, to really get people on board. They want to see that. And when you're watching the Adesanya fight, as I said, it kind of went, as I thought it would go, but after halfway through the first round, you're kind of thinking, oh, okay, this is how the fight's gonna go, and there's no kind of veering away from that, and that's just the way it goes for the rest of the fight. And maybe in the third round, Cannonier had a bit more success, but the results and the fight never seemed in any kind of doubt to me. So yeah, the lack of jeopardy definitely hurts, but you can put together a nice highlight reel for the next promo for the next fight and get people excited. All these people saying I'm never buying an Adesanya pay-per-view ever again and all that stuff. I doubt that will happen, but if this continues and he doesn't get that kind of rival or that kind of near equal in the middleweight division, then the longer it goes on, the less people are going to tune in. But I don't see any kind of mass boycott of Adesanya pay-per-views because of it or anything. People forget and move on pretty quickly.
I think a lot of this as well is the fact that he came in and he destroyed Brunson on his way up. He looked like a guy who was improving. He had that unbelievable fight with Kelvin Gastelum as well. And it just looked like the world was made for him. And, he got was it a Puma deal? And he just he seemed like a guy who a lot of people would like. I don't know. I'm not his biggest fan. He's a bit weird, but can
you draw comparisons to GSP where on the way up he was kind of a finisher going for it, and then when he got on top he just played it super safe and but people still loved and still do love GSP. I wonder will Adesanya hold like a fan base like that? I don't know, but yeah, I think when you're going 5 rounds and you're kind of the pressure's on and you're basically able to just kind of go out there and spar and win handy decisions, it's hard to take little damage, it's hard to argue with that. You're making a lot of money, and he probably would love to have kind of a rabid fan base that are hanging on his every word and can't wait for his next fight and all. But at the end of the day, he's going in there taking very little damage and collecting a lot of money and keeping the belt.
Yeah, it is true. I think there probably are comparisons with GSP, and the fact he's a country behind him as well in New Zealand. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of fans in Australia and places as well. And obviously GSP had Canada behind him, and McGregor had Ireland and all that. That absolutely, I think it definitely helps. And look, I wouldn't say he's finished or anything like that, but Anderson Silva had a few boring fights and things, and he was able to turn it around and stuff. But I think if you're Adesanya, it's funny because I think he's kind of realised it, because he spoke about it this week, and then he just went and performed like that anyway. I just think he just doesn't give a shit, to be honest. But him not giving a shit will not work out for him well, I don't think. I think, okay, maybe there won't be a mass boycott or anything like that, but there also won't be like a mass following. There won't be a mass buying of his pay-per-views because of this. And like, if this was a high-selling pay-per-view, there wasn't much sport got on this weekend in terms of I don't think there was any boxing necessarily, or the NFL's not on right now, or the basketball is over and all of that. I saw a few people who who wouldn't normally be watching the UFC over in America who were watching it. So I'd say this probably did pretty well on pay-per-view. So you had a lot of those, let's say that 15 to 20% of fans that wouldn't normally buy a pay-per-view who bought this. Will they tune in on, in March when or in fucking December when the NFL is on to watch an Israel Adesanya fight the next time? They probably won't, like. But if Adesanya came in here, head kicked Cannonier over 2 or 3 rounds and destroyed him, beat him into oblivion and finished the fight, would they then? Maybe. There's a bigger chance of him doing it then. But he didn't. And I think he blew it in a lot of ways, and I thought it was a horrendous fight. Like, there's no point even going through, I stopped taking notes 3 rounds into this. There was a few leg kicks early. It was a close first round. Izzy was a little bit more aggressive in the second. It was an eye poke, just so boring. Really close third round as well, and I stopped taking notes. Just rubbish after that again. Just feinting and jabbing and missing and everything you'd expect from the worst case scenario on this fight we got, and I hated it.
I don't know. Pretty much. What did you expect to happen?
Exactly. I expected Israel Adesanya to beat a clearly inferior fighter comprehensively, and he kind he kind of fell over the line. Like, it was fucking rubbish.
I don't know about that.
It was
I think
rubbish.
He won pretty comprehensively, but yeah, it wasn't exciting or anything like that. But
he was 2 punches away from losing this fight.
I don't know about that.
He was. That first round was very close. If Cannonier landed a big shot there, he would have won the round. The fourth round was close. If he landed a big shot there, he would have won the round.
I think if he had a lot in the chamber, if he needed it, if he needed to step it up, he could have, I think.
Yeah, that's true as well. Fair enough. And pity he fucking didn't. Anyway, do you think...
I think he needs, if he needs somebody to bring it, he needs that rival. I think that's...
Could it be Alex Pereira?
Yeah, it could be. They have a bit of a rivalry before, and obviously he's coming off a really nice win that we'll talk about. That was pretty much handed to him by Sean Strickland.
Let's just talk about that now altogether, because these guys are going to be linked. I could not get over how badly Sean Strickland fought. And I know, Eric Nixon.
I couldn't believe it. Like, I had him as a guy who could stick to a game plan well and all this stuff, but I don't know what the fucking story was there. It was just diabolical game planning or execution. I don't know what the fuck. Awful.
And, he's fine out of extreme couture. And Eric Nixon is one of these guys who has this great reputation as like this good coach. But I'm not 100% sold on him. He seems like a really cocky sort of coach, and I would think that something like this, if he goes back and looks at it, might take away a little bit of that cockiness a little bit, because the gym has been going really well and stuff recently, and that's, I don't know, is it the best thing in the world? But maybe it's just Sean Strickland being an absolute idiot, honestly. So you'll find, if people don't know, right, Alex Pereira, just this fucking world-class foot boxer, knocked out Adesanya twice the year, once anyway, and Sean Strickland goes in there and he fights his normal stand-up, just awkward style that usually beats people in the shittest division in the UFC, just because it's awkward and people are not used to it. And he goes in there against Alex Pereira, doesn't touch him, throws these stupid jabs out all evening, and then just takes one left hook from Pereira and just goes down and gets absolutely destroyed. No takedown. against Pereira, who almost got submitted by the biggest jobber the UFC's ever seen 2 fights ago.
No even threat or, nothing to resemble any kind of worry for Pereira of a takedown coming.
Awful. It has to be up there with one of the worst performances in UFC history, Graeme, is it? It's awful.
I don't know. We've seen like people like Cindy Dandois in there, so I don't know.
At least she tried her best, like, and she's just a bad fighter, like. But Sean Strickland just blew it, like, and he just did nothing he should have done.
I'd love to know what the actual game plan was. Was that the game plan to just do his normal thing? I like, it couldn't have been, surely.
If Extreme Couture should close its doors in the morning, if that was the fucking game plan going into this fight. What the fuck? Like, you're fighting a world-class kickboxer and you go out there and you want to box him with your fucking chin up and just take a left hook and
you're just gonna walk into a left hook.
Walk straight into a left hook. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely fucking ridiculous. But anyway, look, Pereira against Adesanya, at least there is that bit of jeopardy there. Like, Adesanya's going to probably fight safe again. Or do you know what he's going to probably do? I think he could take Pereira down. Honestly, we could see Francis Ngannou versus Cyril Gane, something like that. Like, Pereira hasn't proven himself to be able to, like, stop takedowns or to be able to do anything great on the ground yet. When he did get taken down, he did okay in terms of takedown defense in that fight against Michailidis, but he did almost get submitted there as well. And surely at this stage, Adesanya has learned enough wrestling to be able to do a bit of it. No, maybe not. It'll probably turn into a
question. We don't know. Like, we haven't seen any offensive wrestling. We've seen guys before who kind of try to rely on that game when it's not their game and they get tired and things like that. But I just think Pereira, if he gets taken down, it looks like it's curtains, even for somebody who's not like prolific on the ground like Adesanya. You'd have to assume that he's going to have a lot more in terms of the wrestling and grappling, but on the feet, it could go either way. Like, I wouldn't say like, Adesanya needs to stay down immediately. I just think that's the easiest route to victory, and we've seen him take that route before, so that probably would be the game plan. But there definitely is some confidence from Pereira there. Like, he's beaten him before, he's finished him before in a different sport, but on the feet, you definitely draw confidence from that, and that could be something, take away a little bit from the confidence of Adesanya going in. But yeah, I'd be like, you'd obviously have to pick Adesanya, but I think that's the closest thing to a rival that he has, and that would be a big fight. I think people will be paying to see that. Even if you don't like Adesanya and you think this guy could knock him out, then you're going to be tuning in. So I think it's the fight to make. You want to make it before Pereira goes out there and gets, taken down and submitted James Toney style.
Yeah, I would agree. The one worry I would have is that Pereira seems to be the stand there, wait for the one big shot and take it sort of fighter, which he's shown in his last couple of fights. No, maybe that'd be different against Adesanya if it turns into a kickboxing match. But if that is the sort of fighter he is, and he fights Adesanya like that, we're probably looking at another 5-round snooze fest here. Although it might be a bit better, because at least Pereira might be able to jab back at him.
The jeopardy will be there of, like, at any moment he could clean his clock. Like, he definitely has that power and ability.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, he definitely. Yeah, that's true. At least we know he has a chance. Like, Cannonier just had no chance in there. So yeah, at least that is a part of it. Look, it's a fight. He's beaten the number 4 or 5 guy in the division now, even though he was unranked. There's nothing else there in terms of something we care about. I'm sure there's other ads coming through. Muniz is coming through as well. We'll talk about him later on. That's definitely a fight I want to see down the road, because Muniz is very, very good. But we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, look, Pereira versus Adesanya is probably going to be next. And it's a fight that'll be built up a lot. But I can't trust Adesanya to have a good fight. Again, like, it's probably going to be a bore fest.
You'll have forgotten all about this, and you'll be hyped for it.
I almost forgot about his bore fest before until we're doing the preview show this week, and then I said straight out, Harry did a bit of analysis, and I was like, Jesus, Harry, is this going to be 5 rounds of boring Adesanya faint festing again? And we were all like, yeah, it probably will be, and it fucking was. And yeah, it's a fight I'd never choose to watch back again. And just shit. Anyway, the co-main event then, which should have been the main. How the fuck was this not the main event? You had a trilogy fight against the 2 consensus best in the world, and you a fucking lad who's his best chance of winning was trying to crystallize
it. It is a third fight. It might be the UFC are thinking, something fresh on the top of the card. Obviously we can look back at it in hindsight, but if Adesanya had gone out there and landed some nice, head kick finish or nice left hand finish or something, maybe it's always easy to say in hindsight. But
I said it beforehand as well.
Yeah,
I did a whole video about it. I tweeted about it. Everyone giving out to me. Oh, Sean, I'm going full Ariel here, but Sean, what are you talking about? Adesanya's the biggest star. He's so exciting. He's fucking not. He is not as big a star as people make out. He's not exciting. Do you know who is? Fucking Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway. They're exciting. This fight turned out to be a domination, but it was intriguing the whole way through. It was entertaining. It was non-stop. Both guys went for it as much as they could. It was just it was a good fight. It was a good fight, even though one guy came out on top. And I remember talking about this coming in. It would have been easy to say, talking about this fight, that it's going to be another close decision. And I think most people thought that, and I thought that myself for a while, but I was thinking about it a little more and gone back watching the fights, and I just thought, and I said this in the previous show, that someone would separate themselves. I'm watching the second fight back. I thought it'd be Max Holloway early. I really did. But I was wrong in terms of that. I was right in terms of someone separating themselves, because Volkanovski separated himself here in an absolutely massive way. And I have a lot of thoughts on the performance from Max Holloway especially, but Volkanovski went in and he fought his fight like he did in the first two fights, and it was enough. It was more than enough. He was absolutely fantastic. What was your read on this, Graeme, on Volkanovski's performance and the fight in general?
Yeah, I thought Volkanovski would win the decision, but I didn't think he would be, so comprehensive. I gave him every round, 50-45, and, he seemed to be in control of the fight quite early, and, he opened up that big kind of gash cut on the eyebrow of Max Holloway, and he was landing a lot of damage, and he just seemed to be doing the cleaner work, and his timing seemed to be better, and he seemed to be frustrating Max, and obviously for Max, he knew this is kind of his last shot at Volkanovski if he doesn't win this, and he just couldn't make it happen. He was just getting outclassed. The timing and the defensive work of Volkanovski was just on point all night. He's just an absolute technician, Volkanovski is, and we talk about him not getting respect all the time, and if people aren't going to respect him after just going out there and dominating, Max Holloway kind of having his way with Max Holloway, in my opinion, for the majority of the fight, it was an absolute masterclass of a performance by a guy who's he's always been a technician, but I think this was just a really, really well put together 5 rounds and just a beautiful performance.
Yeah, I think the difference between this as a brilliant technical performance, aside from what Adesanya did, is that he went for it every time Max gave him an opening. He forced openings. He fought well off the front foot and the back foot. It was entertaining. It was enjoyable, and I think Volkanovski is one of these guys who I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he is, and how he's probably not the biggest puncher in the world in terms of big knockout blow. Now fighting 15 rounds against Max Holloway is probably not good for that either, considering how good of a chin Max Holloway is. We've seen when he fought when he fought against Korean Zombie, he was able to get him out of there and stuff. He is and obviously fighting Aldo before that as well, another guy who was not easy to get out of there unless you're from Dublin, but it was such a great performance. But Max, to me, and I'll get into what happened in the fight in a second, but I think Max fought a really technically or tactically bad fight. It was really bad, because if you go back and you watch, I watched probably Max Holloway's last 5 fights here, including the 2 against Volkanovski, and 4 of those fights, right, Max Holloway, every bit of success he has, it's because of his forward pressure and his volume. You know, we all remember the Calvin Kattar fight where it was, what was it, the most strikes ever landed in the fight in the UFC or whatever. He just destroyed him and elbowed him up and just pushed forward, got to a place in the pocket where your opponent isn't comfortable and you destroy them there, right? Doing that against Volkanovski in the first fight, lost him the fight because Volkanovski is a better fighter in the pocket than Max Holloway. He just is. He's proven that now over 3 fights. He's faster. He's more defensively sound. He hits harder probably as well. He's more technical. He is just a better fighter in that range. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But in this, you know, I said 4 of those 5 fights, Max fought that way. The 5th one was the second Volkanovski fight, where in the first 2 rounds, he didn't have that in the pocket pressure. He came into the pocket, went out of the pocket and landed with big, hard, impactful strikes. And he almost knocked Volkanovski out in the first 2 rounds. And my thinking coming into the fight was, well, if he can do that again, add a bit more, then he'll get Volkanovski out of there, because Volkanovski was almost out of there last time. And I was thinking, okay, maybe Volkanovski would change something or whatever. Volkanovski fought this fight the exact same as he fought the last 2 fights. He fought, and you know, obviously there's little bits of changes, but he's basically an in the pocket, and I actually think he upped the output in lots of different areas, but he's basically an in the pocket, let you come onto him type of fighter. If you don't come onto him, he'll come up and he'll jab you forward. He's very much an A to B sort of fighter in a brilliant way. Max Holloway came in here, and what he did was, so normally, as I said, he has that gargantuan forward pressure with the unbelievable volume, or else he has the big power shots without the pressure necessarily in an ongoing way. In this fight, he had the pressure and none of the volume. So he was just standing there in the pocket trying to like technically pick apart the best fighter on planet Earth at technically picking apart someone in the pocket. You could not have played more into Volkanovski's game if you tried. Max Holloway did everything possible for Volkanovski to win this fight. It was a real tactical mishap. It like literally you couldn't have designed a worse game plan. You could not have designed a worse game plan, I don't think, than what Max Holloway had. He should have been hitting, sticking and moving, getting out of that pocket at all costs. You lost the first 2 fights because you lost the fight in the pocket. Get into the pocket when you need to fight in the pocket to land those big shots and get back out of it when you don't. And he didn't. He stayed there and he didn't make Volkanovski pay in any way for it. And he lost the fight because of it. Like the first round was a bit slow. Volkanovski was landing a few big right hands and Max did a bit late. But from the second round on, it was all Volkanovski. He landed a big elbow. He cut Max Holloway with the right hand. Holloway did a little bit better late, but that cut was so huge. Volkanovski won that round. In the third round, Volkanovski was just a mile too quick, landing great combos. He went into clinch for a while. He won that too. The 4th round, Max threw a few more shots, but it felt like all of Max's attacks ended with Volkanovski landing harder than him, landed some lovely jabs. Max's nose was bloodied up at this stage, bleeding out of both eyes. The 5th round in, it was a little bit slower. Volkanovski landed a load of jabs again. He attacked at times, and it just felt like Max knew he had lost in the 5th round, and Volkanovski kept that pace up, kept attacking, went to try to finish him in the 5th round at one stage even. He didn't manage to do it, but he just destroyed him tactically. But I thought Max tactically was awful, was really, really bad. But taking nothing away from Volkanovski, the only way Max Holloway would have beaten everyone else at 145 in that game, but not Volkanovski. Not Volkanovski at all. What did you think of the fight, Graeme? I know I've gone on a 10-minute fucking rant there about the tactics, but
do you think it was Max Holloway's game plan to try and fight in the pocket, or do you think he was getting frustrated by the fight kind of once again the rounds kind of going Volkanovski's way and he's just trying to land that big shot, kind of turn the tide? Or do you actually think that was his game plan? He just stuck to it, or do you think it was more of a frustration that I'm not going to be able to win these rounds. I'm going to need to land something big.
No, that was his game plan. He came out and he fought that way from the very, very start. Like, if he tried to land something big, I think it probably would have been a better game plan against Volkanovski. Or did something different, fought from the outside, kick, leg kick, head kicks. Cormier kept saying it in the commentary, and he did a good job of saying it. Max needs to kick the head, and I think he realised when he was kind of saying that, and Joe Rogan was saying it too. It was like, we don't want to point it out that Max is fighting in the wrong area here, but he is. Like, Holloway came in, and you see from the very start, go back and watch even the first 2 or 3 minutes of the fight if anyone's watching here, and just look where Holloway is fighting, right, and what he's doing. He's like this kind of sunk over, walking forward pressure, but with no strikes coming. And when I say no strikes, it's obviously he's throwing strikes, but he's not. Go back and watch any 2 minutes of the Calvin Kattar fight and count how many strikes Holloway throws in that 2 minutes, and count how many strikes he throws in the 2 minutes against Volkanovski. I'd say you could nearly pick any 2 minutes versus any 2 minutes, and the Kattar one would be more. Now, it's obviously going to be more when you're fighting an inferior opponent to the greatest featherweight of all time in Alexander Volkanovski, but there just wasn't enough. And even if there was enough, it wouldn't have won him the fight anyway, because that's how he fought in the first fight. Was comprehensive, not comprehensively beaten, was well beaten in that fight. The second fight was closer, don't get me wrong, but he didn't fight that way in the second fight. So to revert back to what he did in the first fight, but with less output, I don't know what he was trying to do. I think he was just trying to technically beat him. It wasn't the case. I don't think, Graeme, maybe it was later, but I don't think it was the case of Max Holloway going in there and trying to land a one-shot knockout punch, which I actually, as I said, I'll say it again, I think would have been a better tactic than the tactic he did use. I think Max Holloway just thought he could technically beat him in the pocket, and he just couldn't. He wasn't good enough to do it. And it's not that he's not good enough, it's that Volkanovski is too good. It's just he is way too good for him. I don't know. Was there anything from Max you saw that would give him hope in the fight, or did you see it that way as well?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's just outmatched. I think we've seen it. Obviously there was closer decisions in this, and people disputed decisions and rounds and all that stuff. But this was very comprehensive, and I think Volkanovski's evolving. Still fight the fight at a rapid rate, and he's able to make adjustments before and during the fight, up there with the very best. And I think maybe Holloway's still young in age, but he's been in there a lot of rounds. He's taken a lot of damage. I don't know. He's not improving at the same rate as Volkanovski, and I think that's the problem. As long as Volkanovski's at the top, I think obviously Max Holloway poses a lot of problems, and you probably pick him to beat nearly every other, if not every other, featherweight. But just when it comes to Volkanovski, I don't know where in what range he gets it done. I think Volkanovski is just able to make the adjustments and just better everywhere that he needs to be to beat Max Holloway. And obviously Max Holloway nearly in the second fight dropped him and could have finished him, but bar something like that, it is MMA. You can land a big punch, guy can go down, but I think just over the rounds throughout the sequences, I think Volkanovski's he's just that bit sharper, that bit quicker, and that bit more technical, and it's just a really big problem for Max Holloway to overcome.
Yeah, I spoke about it last week over in Sherdog about this is a massive fight for Holloway, because where does he go now? He's lost 3 times to Volkanovski. I think he needs to move up. I think he needs to take his time and do it this time. There are plenty of good fights for him up there at 155. I'd love to put him straight up there and have him fight Tony Ferguson. How about that? And if he wins that, maybe Conor McGregor might be back at that time, And that's a very quick move up there for Max Holloway. And I think the Ferguson fight, a very winnable fight. Where's McGregor at in his career right now? That might be another winnable fight for Max Holloway. I think that's what he needs to do. In terms of Volkanovski, then Joe Rogan came in last night. Oh, you've cleaned out the division. You cleaned out the division? Cleaned out the division. He's fought 3 lads for the belt. 3 lads. He's fought the same lad 3 times. How in God's name has he cleaned out the division? What is Joe Rogan talking about? What is he talking about?
He cleaned out the cleaner of the division.
He did, yeah, but that's grand. But that doesn't mean you've cleaned out the division, He still has to fight Rodriguez. He's to fight Emmett. He's to fight Kattar, maybe. He's to fight Aaron and Lallan. These guys are no jokes. Bryce Mitchell is no joke. Ivalev is no joke. Tipuria is no joke. These lads are very, very good fighters, like, and to just ride them off like that, I guarantee you people wrote off Alexander Volkanovski like that as well when he was ranked number 7. You know, I guarantee you they fucking did. Arnold Allen is the one guy in that division I think who can beat him for strength. He is so fucking strong. Josh Emmett's strong as well, and you know what? He can hit hard.
Like as much as I like Arnold Allen, I think like the striking technique differential is just massive.
I don't think he's going to fight that way though. I would pick Alexander Volkanovski to beat all those lads, but still and all, he still has to fight him. Like, Arnold Allen has won like 8 fights in a row. Does he not deserve a title shot? He fucking does. Like, you know, Josh Emmett got a great win there. Well, he probably should have lost to Ketter. But anyway, you know, I'd love to see Yair Rodriguez versus Volkanovski can get another win, get back in there, whatever it might be. There's some very good fights for him there. Now, having said that, I wouldn't mind seeing him going either down or up. I think he has the most realistic chance of anyone we've ever seen of being a 3-weight champion, because I think he could get down to 135 and I think he'd beat the former champion at 155 as well, and Charles Oliveira. I think he would. I think he'd beat most of those lightweights. He's just brilliant. Now, size might be an issue against some of them, but I look at Max Holloway. Max Holloway is a big tall guy, and he beat him pretty comprehensively. So that's how good I think Alexander Volkanovski is. Do you know what? I'm a massive Usman fan, and I think he's fantastic. But I think Volkanovski might be the pound for pound number 1 now for me. I think he might be. You know, he's right up there. He's really, really good. And when I think he would be champion in 3 divisions, how could you not say he's the pound for pound number 1? Now, having said that, I think Usman would probably be the champion at 185 as well. If he went up there, I don't think he could get down to 155, but he'd probably be the champion there as well if he could get down there, but I don't think he can. But what a great performance from Volkanovski. I'm looking forward to seeing what is next for him. Right, let's run through the rest of the card. Brian Barbarina, Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler started brilliantly. He was so defensively good. Barbarina was throwing a lot, but Robbie was blocking everything. He was landing big power shots. Won the first round on 2 of the 3 judges' cards. Was doing well in the second round, but then Volkanovski, Barbarina came out and he just upped the pace. He took Robbie Lawler shots, and Robbie tired, and he tired, and he tired, and he got hurt, and he got hurt, and he got hurt, and he looked 40 years of age. He looked 20 years of age in the first round. He looked 40 in the second round, didn't he?
Like, Barbarina was landing like a lot of shots in the second round, but they didn't seem to have that much power behind them. And in the past, you know, you would have expected Robbie Lawler to eat them for breakfast, as you say. But yeah, he did look like he's a bit, you know, he looked every bit his age, and his, what is it now, 45 fights, a lot of wars in there. Yeah, you know, in the past, I think he would have been able to take those shots and land his big shots like he was in the first round. But I just don't think he's able to take the same shots he was. But yeah, he did like, you know, it was a lot of volume thrown by Barbarina, and he stayed cool and, you know, deflected or rolled with or blocked or head rolled most of the stuff in the first round to start the second round. But the ones that were getting through didn't look to me to be, you know, big shots, but they seem to affect Robbie more than maybe they should have. Maybe I'm underestimating the power of Barbarina, but I don't think we've seen, it's not a big power from him before, and they didn't look like big powerful shots to me. But obviously I think it was a good stoppage in the end. I think Robbie was out of it, and it was you know, it was only going one way.
Then we had O'Malley versus Munoz, the eye poke. What were your thoughts on that one, Graeme? It was a strange one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'd say Dean Barry was watching that saying
he fucking was. He put it up on Instagram. Did you see that?
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I didn't even see that. Yeah. I don't know. O'Malley didn't really do anything. He just ate a bunch of leg kicks, and he landed a few shots. It was a close round, but he didn't really, you know, get anything off. And the second round, he seemed to be kind of getting more into his flow a little bit, but nothing spectacular. He was being a bit frustrated by Munoz, I think. But obviously the no contest, I think it was an accidental eye poke. I don't think he intended to do it, so I think it was the right decision. But it was a disappointing end to a disappointing fight, a disappointing performance by O'Malley. But for Munoz, you know, he was doing well. He was keeping it tight. He was maybe nicking the first round and some scorecards. I don't know how you scored it, but he was making it close anyway. And you know, he was doing a good job in terms of trying to win the fight. Maybe not making it very exciting, but yeah, it's just disappointing from Sean O'Malley.
Yeah, I would agree. I two of the judges gave the first round to Munoz, and more importantly, I gave the first round to Munoz. I just thought he kicked the leg out of him. And on the Dean Barry thing, like, Dean Barry eye poked Mike Jackson off of a clinch when he didn't have his fingers sticking out in like a striking way, you know, where your hand has to be either up or in a fist. It wasn't like that at all. It wasn't a striking exchange. He was posting off, and he had his hand out, and he had his fingers out. It was a post. It wasn't a strike. It wasn't a jab. It wasn't a feint like that. O'Malley had his fingers out, and you know, they were looking, oh, where was the second night bug? He had two fingers in the eyes of Munoz at the same time. Now, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't egregious, to be fair, and I think the no contest is right. But if you're DQing Dean Barry for the way he got DQ'd, then O'Malley was striking. He had his fingers out in a way you're not supposed to have them out. Mookie Alexander tweeted about it. He called it in the first round. Sean O'Malley is doing this. He's worse than John Jones, I think he said. And then this happens. I think he should have been warned before that. You could see it from a mile away. And Dean Barry, I said it at the time, and I think this proves I'm right. Like, this was way more egregious than the Dean Barry one. He just got really unlucky in terms of the timing. And, you know, there was the kick in the dick.
I think they're both accidents, but I think this one is kind of, as you said, it was an accident waiting to happen the way he 100%. Was fighting. And I don't know if he does that in training and with his sparring partners, but if he doesn't, then, you know, maybe it's a kind of I don't know, skating of the rules, but you're always going to get away with it. You know, he got away with it here. I don't think he did it on purpose, but he obviously knows that, you know, everybody in MMA knows that doing that can lead to an eye poke, and obviously in the flow of the fight, things happen you don't exactly plan. But yeah, I think, as you mentioned from the tweet there, it is something that with John Jones, that is an accident. Like with John Jones, it is an accident waiting to happen, and it did happen here. But having said all that, I do think it was accidental, and that the no contest was the right call. But yeah, if he had been warned before, which maybe he should have been, then yeah, it could have went a different way.
And like, I'm very against points being taken in mixed martial arts, and I hate this shit when people say, oh, the first warning is in the dressing room. But when you're standing there with like, and if you're standing there with your fingers out, that's a foul. That is a foul. You don't have to put those fingers in the eyes. To just be there with your fingers out is a foul. And if you're constantly doing that and then the fingers do go into the eyes, I have no sympathy for you. I think I would like more points to be taken for eye pokes, because you can say accident, but you use a great phrase there, Graeme. An accident waiting to happen. An accident waiting to happen is not an accident, you know, because you know you're waiting for it to happen. So an accident by its nature has to be something that's shocking. You're not waiting to happen. You're not waiting for it to happen. So I think we need to. The referees need to warn more. They need to stop the fight and go, stop this, because if you do that and then you have a situation like this, you can deal with it more strongly. But anyway, we leave it like that. Jalen Turner then, not too much to talk about in that one. He guillotined Brad Riddell after landing a right hand on him. Very good stuff. I think Jalen Turner is definitely a guy to look forward to and look at in that 155-pound division. Brad Riddell obviously takes a step back now. Then we had Jim Miller against Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Another guillotine choke, and Cerrone retired afterwards, Graeme. I assume you're going to wish him well in his retirement. He'll never fight again. This will be his last one ever.
Here written about his career. I'm looking forward to him jumping in on a week's notice in about 2 months' time.
Yeah, 100%. But look, a good win for Jim Miller. And Cerrone's had a great career. We all know he'll be back. He even said it himself afterwards as well. He would be back.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he's like, I might get the itch in a year or two. So I was like, yeah, of course you will. But we'll talk about Gary in a second, but we'll run through the other the other fights first. Julia Steliarinko, who'd been training with Liam McCourt and Andrew McGahan up there, got an armbar armbar. I don't know if you saw my tweet. Armbar got on the fucking thing as she was armbarring her in the replay. It was absolutely fantastic. It was a good performance by her. Macy Barbarina beat Jessica I retired as well. She'll probably be back. Andrea Muniz then just took Uriah Hall down and dominated him for 3 rounds. Not the most exciting performance in the world, but one that is needed in that middleweight division where there are very few wrestlers. I saw my guy Brian Petrie talking about it last night, and he was saying he's maybe a bit limited in his jiu-jitsu in terms of his finishing. Now, he's great jiu-jitsu, and that, you know what, I mightn't disagree with him. If he could add another little bit to it there, maybe it's different, but yeah, good performance from him. And then Dricus du Plessis against Brad Tavares, he won the fight, but God almighty, he took some damage in it, and he's wide open. If Brad Tavares could have thrown a counter left hook, he would have knocked Dricus du Plessis down probably about 8 times in that fight. But anyway, good stuff from du Plessis. Graeme, what do you think of Ian Garry?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good performance from Gary. He looked more comfortable in there in the octagon than we've seen so far in his UFC career. I think he looked kind of like he's looked before in Cage Warriors and stuff like that. He looked kind of at home in there. He didn't have it all his own way, as we said he wouldn't. Gabe Green's definitely a game tough guy. He can take a shot and come forward. He's a tough guy. He's a step up in competition for Ian. But Ian's those knees up the middle, his hands, the sharpness and the smoothness in there was just too much for Gabe Green. And I think he had Gabe Green dropped at one stage, but I think it's good that he got to go to the 3 rounds again. It's easy to forget how young in the game Ian is, but I don't want to see him kind of propelled too quickly. Obviously, we want to see him kind of nursed as much as you can be in the UFC, and it looks like they're doing that. They're kind of building him up steadily, and he seems to be growing into his game, and he looks to be making improvements like we used to see him make between fights and during camps and things like that. So yeah, I think it was basically all positives for Ian here. He, obviously he took a couple of shots and stuff, but I think that's good. There's stuff to go back and work on, and to bring forward with him to improve in the camp and going forward in his fight. So yeah, I think a really kind of perfect night for Ian Garry.
Yeah, I honestly, I thought he looked amazing. I thought he looked really, really good for the size of him as well. And I've interviewed him in person and stuff. He's a big boy, and the way he can move so quickly. It was funny, himself and Robbie Lawler fighting out of the same gym. The way Robbie was kind of moving his head and defensively so good. It was very similar to the way Ian Garry was doing, and obviously they probably have the same striking coach or whatever it might be, but obviously Garry has the old 16 years of an age advantage on Robbie at this stage, but he looks so good. And it's weird though as well, a lot of the strikes from Gabe Green looked like they were landing, but if you watch very closely, they actually weren't. It was Ian Garry moving his head and riding with the punches as well at times. Now he did ate a couple of punches, especially I sound like I'm from the middle of fucking Kerry or something, but especially at the end of the second round. But I thought he looked so fast.
That's the bogger in you coming out, Sean.
It is, yeah. He looked so fast, especially in that first round. Just his timing was absolutely fantastic. In the second round, obviously, was a little bit tougher, but he got to the clinch. He won all those clinching battles there. He's strong, good takedown defense. His balance was absolutely fantastic. He knocked Gabe Green down. Was the start of the third round, wasn't it? His 1-2s down through the middle. It was all very good. And do you know what? I actually thought Gabe Green did a great job of cutting off the cage and making it a fight in the phone booth. And Ian Garry won that fight in the phone booth. Imagine if he wasn't able to do that and Ian Garry was able to use his height, length, reach advantage even more. It would have been a destruction altogether. But I thought Gabe Green fought very well, to be fair, but Ian Garry was just a level above. And 10-0 now. I've obviously been excited for Ian Garry for a long time, but I'm very excited after this one. It was a really good performance. The last performance was workmanlike, I suppose is a bit unfair, but it was a performance that kind of needed to be done.
A learning curve.
Yeah, definitely. This was like that, except with just so much more fluency and so much more jeopardy, I suppose, and he put more power into these shots, and he was able to defend against a better fighter than he fought the last time in Gabe Green as well. Very good. Very, very good. And, you know, obviously, as you said, Graeme, there's things to work on, maybe to up it in certain areas, maybe to get his opponents out of there. But that's a kind of a small thing. That's something that'll come as well, I think. But he's looking so much better defensively. I remember we talked about Ian early in his career, and he ended up giving out to us because we said he was taking too many shots. By God, he's not taking too many shots now. He's defensively. That was the one thing for me. He looked defensively so much better. And you could talk about the last minute or last 90 seconds of the second round. But even
I was
then,
going to mention that. I think he got eye poked right before that.
He did,
and
yeah.
it wasn't stopped. So that was kind of, you know, you could see him kind of trying to blink it out. And I think that affected a little bit what happened in the last minute, even though there wasn't anything, you know, too worrying for Ian there. But, you know, straight away when he had the minute to kind of, you know, clear his vision and all that stuff, he came straight out and dropped Gabe Green straight away in the third round. So yeah, I thought that was impressive as well. Yeah,
there's a lot of rubbish talked as well this week about like the Irish fans not travelling and not being behind them. This fight was only 2 weeks ago. It was announced. You know, I know Ian Gary had known about it before that, but like, what? How are you going to fucking organise to go out to Las Vegas in 2 weeks? I think that was a bit unfair. And also, you know, you saw maybe a few of the interviews and stuff. People are kind of calling him a bit cringy and things. But first of all, I think him not getting in a post-fight interview was probably the best thing that could have happened to him. And I saw loads of Irish people coming out tweeting about Ian Gary afterwards as well. And that support was all there. And, you know, a lot of people talk a lot of shit about Ian Gary, but I think, you know, people, you know, throw a bit of criticism at the interviews or be a bit cringy at times or whatever. But when he comes out and he performs like that, the support is there. And I think the support was there as well going into the fight. So, you know, I think, you know, it's very easy to be critical of a guy. He's fucking 10-0. He's doing great things. Still 24 years of age. Still a babby, you know, in life as much as anything else. And it's been a tough time moving country, getting married, a baby on the way and all. And he's dealt with it unbelievably well. Any criticism is small criticism for Ian Gary. So credit to him as a fighter, but as everything as well. He's done a great job. So fair play to Ian Gary. Right. I'll quickly run you through what happened in PFL, lads. I know a lot of people probably didn't watch it, but I actually have a video coming out on Sherdog this week talking about everything that happened in PFL this season. Kayla Harrison absolutely destroyed Caitlin Young. She's through to the playoffs now. Sadabusi beat Rory McDonald in a very, very close fight. I thought he won. I thought it was a good decision. Rory obviously didn't again, but both of them are through. Ray Cooper is out. He destroyed Brett Cooper in 24 seconds. Megan McKerimov, I think, is out as well, but he got a big knockout there. Larissa Pacheco got her second first round KO of the season. She beat Jenna Fabian, who had beaten Julia Budd before that. Unfortunately, Julia Budd is not through and she won't be fighting Kayla Harrison this year, which is a massive issue for them. Magomed Malatov beat Al Shlawi, and then Makatina Jindrova and Kaleshnik all won as well. And you know, the regular season is now over and we were going into the playoffs, so that should be fun. Centurion, Graeme, I know you watched a lot of this last night, a lot of Irish fighters fighting. I know Danny McCormack picked up a loss, but Cian Cowley won. Steve Costello won, if I'm not mistaken. I actually didn't see that fight. Nathan Kelly and Kiefer Crosby as well. What did you think overall of the show? I tuned into that stream a few times, and by God,
the stream was diabolical.
Embarrassing.
It started off on Twitch, got banned. Then we managed to find a YouTube version with no audio, but it kept lagging and stopping. And then the Twitch was back, but then that was stopping. And yeah, it was just all sorts of trouble trying to watch it. But yeah, it was obviously Danny McCormack lost decision, which I actually didn't get to see because at the time the stream was banned. But yeah, that's obviously disappointing for Danny. 2 losses in a row there, but I didn't get to see it, so I don't really know. I don't know if you saw that fight.
Yeah, the exact same thing happened to me. The stream was banned. Then I went back on the YouTube stream, and the whole thing was just like stop start. You couldn't even watch it. So hopefully there will be a stream up somewhere where I can watch it. But no, I didn't see that. I saw the end of the Cian Cowley one. Did you see that whole fight?
Yeah, I saw most of it. He got taken down in the first round, and kind of nothing much happened there. In the second round, I think the other guy was trying to do the same thing, get under him. He was a lot shorter. He was trying to get on the hips and get him down. Cian Cowley got a clinch and landed some knees. And I think I was watching with no sound at this stage because there was some backup YouTube dodgy enough stream. But it seemed that he either verbally submitted or tapped to the knees in the clinch from Cian, and there was kind of a bit of confusion from Cian what was going on when the ref was trying to stop it. So I wasn't exactly sure what had happened when the fight ended, but it was apparently a submission from the knees and the strikes.
Yeah, Cian tweeted at me last night because I was like, is he going to get DQ'd here? Because the referee was fucking mad. And then Cian was like, no, I was just showing strikes. It was the referee's job to stop it. I was like, to be fair, he's right. The referee did a horrific job, but Cian won anyway, and he deservedly won. He landed knees and hurt the guy as well. And then Kiefer went in and just took the guy down and beat him with ground and pound. Just absolute jobber, 6-13. I didn't see the Nathan Kelly fight either. The stream went down again. I don't know if any of the lads saw it or not, but this show, I couldn't have been less impressed with it, honestly. It was awful. Absolutely. It was embarrassing, for the good fighters to be on a show like this. I know John Kavanagh recently was giving out about Cage Warriors and saying Octagon was a great show, which it is and all, but to say that and to be on a shit show like this, it was embarrassing stuff. Now the lads picked up good wins and all that, fair play to them, but God Almighty, I don't think they would have expected it to be maybe this bad. Yeah, not able to stream a Twitch or a YouTube stream successfully in 2022. That's pretty much that level of incompetence you probably wouldn't expect. Yeah, that is true, to be fair. But when you throw stones like that, you probably shouldn't be living in glass houses. But anyway, UFC then next week. Not the best UFC card in the world, to be honest. On the undercard, not too much. Antonina Shevchenko and Courtney Casey. Eamon Zahabi is back. Cynthia Calvillo versus Nina Nunes. That should be a fun fight, actually. Malarkey versus Johnson. That'd actually be a good fight as well. Jamie Pickett is on the card. Saeed Nurmagomedov is on this as well. Kai Bahalio against Arman Petrosian. I'm actually looking forward to that. I like Bahalio a lot. And it's Dos Anjos versus Fizayev, a fight that has supposed to be happening about 10 times. Fizayev beat Riddell by a wheel kick, a win that maybe doesn't look as good now after what happened last night, and he beat Bobby Green and Renato Moicano before that, Graeme. It should be an interesting fight, this one. I think a lot of it depends on where Dos Anjos is in his career, but I expect the two of these lads to go to war. I need to maybe look more into it. I was very concentrated in UFC 276, but obviously we'll have the preview show this week. What are your initial thoughts on it, Graeme?
Yeah, it's an interesting one to see, Dos Anjos back down to 155. I do think it's his best weight class, but when you're kind of jumping around, it's not ideal, I don't think, and it's definitely a step up in competition for Fizayev. I expect him to have enough, though. He looked good against Bobby Green, and obviously got the wheel kick against Brad Riddell. I think Ortiz is on the downturn of his career. He definitely has a good, well-rounded game, but I think the game's passing by a little bit, and I'd be kind of disappointed in Fizayev if he didn't have enough here.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think it'll be a fun one though at the same time. All right, everyone, that's it from us for this week. Please sign up over on Patreon, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. It's just the start of the month now. We'll have loads of stuff to Q&A every Tuesday, hot topic every week, every Thursday. We have Speaker's Corner. This week there's an episode of The Chasing Pack coming up with myself and Ian O'Neill. Loads of stuff all the time. Every week you have 4 or 5 extra podcasts there. So for 4 or 5 extra podcasts a week, and in a month, it's the price of a sandwich, the price of a pint, €4.50 with tax on top of that. So, very reasonable. If you want to help us out, if you want to help us keep the lights on, please go over there and sign up. Patreon, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. All right, we will leave it there. Graeme, give us your quote for the week before we go.
You are not to blame for bittersweet distractors. Dare not speak its name.
The dog got in there on that one as well. Fair play to you. We'll see you all next Tuesday or Sunday or Monday, whenever it is.